When he shook her lightly, "Get up, we reach," he whispered in ear, and Mr. Park raised his brow and leaned back on his driver's seat. "Wine, get up," he whispered, and Mr. Park formed and stared him through mirror. "When we reach, get up," he whispered in ear again. "Why are you whispering?" Mr. Park whisper asked from him. Taehyung raised his phone in response. "She's sleeping, that's why," he whispered reply and shook Wyan lightly before whispering in her ear once again. "Get up." "You are supposed to wake her up," he whispered, and he frowned. "So?" he asked in confusion. "So you are not supposed to whisper," he said loudly, and Taehyung quickly placed his palm on Wyan's ear. "It's not the way to wake up anyone, old monster," he murmured under his breath, but again for his unfortunate Mr. Park heard. "I am one who wake her up in past 24 years, you young monster." Mr. Park resorted back and shook Wyan a little harshly for waking her up. He frowned and tried to save her from her shock. She whispered some incoherent word before opening her eyes. "You shouldn't shake her like this," he glared. His father-in-law, unaware of Wyan's eyes, were on him. "So what? Am I supposed to whisper like you?" he whispered, making him pouted in response and glared Mr. Park. "Cruel man," he whispered, pulling her body close to his chest. "But I am still on my point. You should not shook her like this," he retorted innocently and shook her harshly, showing Mr. Park how he shook his Wyan few minutes before. "And what you just did," he smirked. Taehyung's eyes pointed. He looked down toward her face and shook his head negatively. "It wasn't me. It was your father who shook you," he said in a breath, and Mr. Park glared him. "Why are you admit on making my daughter hate me?" he asked Shinny, and Taehyung frowned. "I am not doing anything, Dad. It's you who is planning to keep her with you and send me away." He pouted like a child, and Wyan stared him with love. She knows her husband is damn cute and innocent, but she never knew that her husband is this much insecure and childish too. She raised her hand for cupping his cheek, but stopped listening her father. "And who told you this?" he retorted, and Wyan turned her head toward her dad. I know it. I saw you looking her in car and not letting her come to me," he replied, sucking like a 5-year-old, and Wyan, who was trying hard to control herself after seeing her this much cute husband, lost her control, and she pulled his face down and placed a hard kiss on his cheek. He closed his eyes like a kid and run away. "Today's kid," he muttered, and get down from car, not before saying, "When you guys will done, then come inside the home." "Your father is damn rude," he pouted, and Wyan picked his side of lip, making him blush. "Let's go," she whispered against his cheek, and he nodded before placing a kiss on her forehead. "Whose coat this is?" he frowned, seeing her in coat, and she smiled before saying, "Dad." "It's not looking that much good on you. You should try this." He quickly removed her coat and started opening his own coat. He was damn busy in getting jealous from his own father-in-law that he didn't even realize that Wyan is half lying on his lap, only in shirt. She blushed like a teenager before hiding her face in his chest, and he stared at her first confusedly, then shrugged away with a smile and patted her head. He made her wear his coat and took Mr. Park's coat with a smirk. Now let's go. He picked her up in his arm in a bridal style and head inside the mansion. They stopped on the door, listening Mrs. Park's angry voice. I told you not to make her marry in King family, she shouted angrily. But you were adamant on making my daughter's life hell. Now see, that boy is on road. He is going to leave here to eat for free, she screamed, and Mr. Park glared his wife angrily. Wine signed Taehyung to place her down, and he, who was damn hurt to even respond, placed her back on her feet with his head hung down. Tears were threading on fall, but he controlled himself. You are not this much weak. You are the boy who survived for a year without your parents. His mind concluded him, and he nodded with tears. What the hell is wrong with you? He shouted angrily. I know you don't like Taehyung because I chose him over your friend's son, and Wine is my daughter. I know what is right or wrong for her. He retorted angrily, and Mrs. Park glared. So now daughter of billionaire is going to live with an ex-billionaire. You know. Why she can't survive a month without wasting luck? Mrs. Park resorted back, and they both continued unaware of the presence of Taehyung. Wyan held his palm in his and intertwined her finger with his and turned toward him. Let's go to your parents' house. Taehyung widened his eyes widened when they fell on the entrance of the door. He faked a smile and shook his head before making his way toward them. What are you both doing on the door? Come get inside. He tried to sound normal, but he failed to hide the hurt caused by his wife. He looked toward Wyan, and his wife was innocent in air, but he shrugged his shoulder and passed a warm smile toward them. Taehyung tried to smile back but failed. He again tried to fake a smile, but his expression and the hurt which flashed in his eyes betrayed him. Wayne wrapped her both hands around Taehyung's right hand, and he smiled, a genuine one. Seeing her face, I am with you, she whispered, and gave him a side hug. Mrs. Park twisted her mouth before making her way toward them. Let's go, Wyan. She pulled her harshly toward herself, making her stumble and fall in the process. Wyan, he breathed and quickly went to her side for giving her support. But before he can touch her, Mrs. Park held her palm toward her and shook negatively. Stay away from my daughter. She sounded stern and his face paled. He tried to hide his hurt and pain but failed. He looked toward his Wyan with a pain, and her heart clenched, seeing her Taehyung this much valuable for her. Mom, she stared her mother with a tear, snatched her hand back, making her mother shocked. Not anymore, you insult him enough, she whispered silently, and her eyes blazed fire, shocking Mrs. Park. It doesn't take Mrs. Park long to realize that the girl at front of her is his wife, not her daughter. Wyan, she looked toward her daughter with a hurt, but Wyan turned her face away and stared toward her Taehyung. He shook his head negatively and told her through his eyes to not behave like this. Her eyes shined with a tear, and she was quick to throw herself on him and wrapped her arm around his neck, sobbing badly. She was hurt from her mother act and stuck between her mother and husband. She felt her husband need her, and also her mother is wrong, so she claimed him more, giving her family a silent message not to try to separate her from her husband. When it's not a movie, it's a real life. You will not be able to cope up with situation. You never face that, her mother said extremely, and Wine rolled her eyes angrily before focusing her gaze. Mom, I am the root of his misery, so first of all, stop blaming him for this thing. He lost because of me. If he would not had gone against his family for saving my image, then he would have his CEO position. She shouted angrily, but before she can speak more, Taehyung held her hand and glared her angrily. You are not going to disrespect your mom just because she is worried for your future. He gritted his teeth angrily and showed her his eyes. Wine bent her eyes down with a tear, and Mr. Park stared his daughter assumedly because she doesn't resorted back to her husband and accept her mistake. I am really sorry, ma'am, he whispered and stared Mrs. Park for a minute before placing Wine palm in her palm. You are my Wine mother, and I will respect your decision. I need a little time, and I will build everything back, which I had once, he said comfortably, and Wine stared him angrily with tears. You are not supposed to take decision of my life, Mr. Kim, she shouted angrily and snatched her hand from her mother's hand. You are just care about other, but you don't give me a damn. Do whatever you want, because I am not going to run behind you anymore. She controlled her tear and turned her back toward him and ran toward her room, leaving him on his own tear. Mrs. Park stared Taehyung with a smile, and Mr. Park glared his wife angrily for the drama she created a minute before. Oh my gosh, she squealed before hugging Taehyung tightly, shocking both Mr. Park and Taehyung. Oh my gosh, you choose a jam, honey. She jumped and hugged her husband, breaking her hug with Taehyung. Sweetheart, he raised his brow, demanding an explanation, and she pouted like her daughter, melting her husband as well as son-in-law heart. I was just teasing, she stammered and speak glared toward Taehyung, who was staring her like she had grown horns. I was just trying to know how much Wine is up for her decision about supporting Taehyung. She pouted and passed a sorry smile toward Taehyung, who smiled back with a confusion. What's wrong with this family? He minded his mind and said angrily, why they are hell admit on separating me from my Wine. His heart cried and his eyes wandering in living room for a glass for his wife. We are not going to let you leave here for a single day. His heart and mind simultaneously, and he nodded. I am not going to leave here, not even for a day, he muttered under his breath. For his unfortunate Mr. and Mrs. Park both heard it. Mrs. Park hung her head down sadly. Taehyung, he called him and tried to know his inner battle. He laughed and cried at the same time. Mr. Park pointed toward a room upstairs and signed him to go. He laughed nervously, and Mrs. Park gave him her best puppy eyes and pointed toward Wine room. His eye welled up with a tear. He shook his head negatively and started heading out from mansion. I don't want to die, he whispered. Mrs. Park glared him, faking anger, and dragged him toward Wine room forcefully. He shook his head negatively and passed them a smile. Taehyung stumbled on his feet and fell straight on Wine Fat. She glared at him angrily. He raised his head and laughed and cried at the same time and hit his head on the floor thrice. She continued to glare him and he sat on the floor with his head on his palm. He turned back to look his mother and father-in-law for the last time before sacrificing himself for the mess they created. Wine, he called her too much sweetly, but closed his mouth quickly, seeing her glare him. He clumped hard again. He courage to open his mouth. I knew your mom was playing prank. That's why I support her. He tried to say something reasonable and ended up saying this. He once again sneaked glares toward her, but found her glaring him like before. I am not afraid of you, okay? He whined before getting up from the floor and sitting beside her in a full confident mode. But as soon as she got up from bed and made her way toward gate, he found waiting for her next action. He found turned in a scared puppy look as soon she locked the door from inside. Are you going to beat me? He asked with a scared expression and cupped his head in his palm. Oh God, where the hell I got stuck? First Mr. Park and Mrs. Park, now you. He gave her his best puppy eyes and usual. Why an anger melt? She stepped close to him and took her place beside him. Wine, he called her sweetly and tried to hold her palm but decided another way. Wine, he called her again, sounded more sweetly than last time. She smiled, but before he can notice, he turned her face away, making him more worried. Baby, he said, Flo. Her eyes popped out from the sockets. She turned her head toward him quickly and stared him with wide eyes. What do you call me? She asked with a smile on her lips and waited for him to repeat. Wine, he replied, smirking toward her, and her smile disappointed. She pouted, twisted her mouth unscientifically, and turned her face away. Baby, he called her lovely, and she again turned toward him with a smile. Say it again, she whispered with a smile, and he stared her innocently, hiding his smirk. Wine, he whispered, and she glared him angrily.